It was the end of summer, the days getting shorter, and the nights turning longer. I found myself taking up a job as a night security guard at a dilapidated warehouse on the outskirts of a small American town. The building had a rusty, old facade that seemed to sag under the weight of its years, and the tall grass surrounding it whispered secrets to the wind. On my first night, I drove to the warehouse under a moonless sky, the streetlights flickering sporadically, casting eerie shadows that danced across my path. The warehouse was far from the most comforting place. The thick metal doors creaked ominously when I pushed them open, revealing a vast expanse of empty space. My only companions were the various crates and boxes stacked haphazardly, remnants of long-abandoned shipments. I felt an unsettling chill as I stepped inside, as if I had intruded upon a place that preferred solitude. The owner of the warehouse had given me a simple rundown of my duties: keep watch, ensure no one entered after hours, and report any suspicious activity. He had warned me of the local vagrants and troublemakers who sometimes sought shelter in the building. I was armed with a flashlight and a walkie-talkie, which felt woefully inadequate in the face of the haunting silence that enveloped me. As the clock struck midnight, I began my rounds. I walked the aisles, scanning the shadows that lurked in the corners of the warehouse. The air was thick with dust, and the floor creaked beneath my feet, amplifying the unnerving stillness. Every now and then, I would pause, listening intently for any sounds. There was a whisper of wind outside, but inside, all I could hear was the slow, rhythmic ticking of the clock on the wall. Halfway through my patrol, I noticed something odd. One of the crates, marked with a faded, fragile sticker, had been shifted slightly. It was small enough to be overlooked, but my instincts kicked in. I leaned closer, inspecting it for any signs of tampering. Just as I did, I heard a noise, a soft, almost imperceptible shuffle coming from the far end of the warehouse. My heart raced as I turned off my flashlight, plunging myself into darkness. The shadows felt alive, stretching and contorting into grotesque shapes. The shuffle grew louder, and I could make out the sound of someone, or something, moving between the aisles. I gripped my flashlight tightly, preparing for anything. "Hello?" I called out, my voice echoing through the empty space. There was no response, just the unsettling sound of silence creeping back in. My instincts told me to investigate, but a primal fear held me back. I took a deep breath, flicked on my flashlight, and pointed it toward the sound. The beam of light illuminated nothing but stacks of crates and abandoned machinery. I took a tentative step forward, scanning every corner of the room. My pulse quickened. I could feel a presence watching me, lurking just out of sight. I continued my patrol, the feeling of being watched never leaving me. When I returned to the security desk, I couldn't shake off the dread that had settled in my stomach. I glanced at the clock. It was nearing 2 a.m. The unease only heightened as I sat there, straining my ears for any further sounds. Minutes turned into hours, and I couldn't help but feel that the warehouse itself was alive, breathing with a menacing rhythm. As I prepared for another round, I spotted something out of the corner of my eye, a shadow darting past one of the windows. I jerked my head toward it, my heart hammering against my ribcage. Was it a vagrant? Or perhaps an animal? My mind raced with possibilities as I approached the window. The moonlight filtered through, casting long shadows that distorted reality. I cautiously pulled back the curtain, but there was nothing outside. Just the empty street and the darkened sky. I shook my head, chastising myself for letting my imagination run wild. Perhaps it was nothing, I thought, trying to calm my nerves. But the lingering feeling that something was off gnawed at me. The rest of the night dragged on, each tick of the clock echoing in my mind. I tried to focus on my duties, reminding myself that it was just a job. But as the hours slipped away, the anxiety grew unbearable. I couldn't ignore it any longer. I had to get to the bottom of it. Maybe it was the silence that was making me uneasy, or perhaps it was the knowledge that I was all alone in this vast, empty place. Just as I was about to head out for another round, my walkie-talkie crackled to life. The static jolted me, and I quickly grabbed it. "Hello? Is anyone there?" I asked, my voice trembling slightly. "Hey, you there?" It was the owner, sounding concerned. "We've had reports of some suspicious activity around the warehouse. Can you check it out?" I could feel my heart sink. "Sure, I'll take a look," I replied, forcing confidence into my voice. I stepped outside, the cool night air hitting my face like a slap. The street was eerily quiet, but I felt a sense of foreboding creeping back in. As I walked around the perimeter of the building, I noticed that the back door had been slightly ajar. My stomach dropped. Had I left it open? I didn't remember doing so. I cautiously approached, pushing the door open wider with my flashlight illuminating the darkened interior. The sound of my own breath echoed in my ears as I stepped inside. The warehouse felt even more oppressive from this angle, the shadows growing thicker, almost swallowing me whole. I peered into the darkness, listening intently. Just then, I heard it again, the shuffle. It was closer now, more pronounced. I froze, my heart racing. "Who's there?" I shouted, hoping to scare off whoever it was. The shuffle stopped, replaced by an unnerving silence that sent chills down my spine. I strained to hear anything, but there was nothing, only the heavy silence that pressed against me like a weight. I decided I couldn't let fear control me. I had to find out what was going on. Taking a deep breath, I ventured further inside, my flashlight cutting through the darkness. The beam flickered over the rows of crates, illuminating nothing but dusty, forgotten items. Then I heard it, a soft whisper, barely audible, as if someone was talking to themselves. My blood ran cold. I wanted to turn and run, but something compelled me to keep going. I inched closer to the sound, my heart thumping loudly in my chest. Finally, I reached the end of the aisle, and what I saw next made my stomach drop. A figure stood there, silhouetted against the faint light from the far end of the warehouse. I couldn't make out any features, but the outline was unmistakable. Someone was there. I took a step back, my instincts screaming at me to flee, but my legs felt rooted to the ground. The figure turned slowly, and I caught a glimpse of something glinting in their hand. Panic surged through me as I realized that I was not alone. This was not a figment of my imagination. I was facing a real threat. "Who are you?" I shouted again, my voice shaky. The figure didn't respond, only taking a step toward me, the light illuminating their face partially. In that moment, I saw a look of madness in their eyes, something primal and terrifying. I had to get out. I spun on my heel and ran, adrenaline fueling my escape. I burst through the back door and slammed it shut behind me, my heart racing as I gasped for breath. The night had turned into a nightmare, and the warehouse felt more like a prison than a workplace. My mind raced as I contemplated what to do next, my instincts screaming at me to leave. But I knew I had to stay. I had a job to do, and I wouldn't let fear win. As I dialed the owner's number, my hands trembled. I needed backup. The shadows had taken on a life of their own, and I could no longer trust the silence that surrounded me. I felt the weight of the darkness pressing in, and I knew this was just the beginning. Little did I know, the night was far from over, and the true horror of what I was facing was just around the corner. The sun rose the next morning, casting a soft light over the town. I sat in my car, parked outside the warehouse, trying to shake off the remnants of the terrifying encounter from the night before. The memories played in my mind like a haunting film, every detail sharp, every fear palpable. I was supposed to be the protector, the guardian of this forsaken place, but all I felt was the gnawing anxiety of being hunted. After the owner arrived, he listened intently as I recounted the events of the night. He seemed skeptical at first, shaking his head in disbelief. "It's probably just a vagrant, someone looking for a place to sleep," he said, dismissing my fears. But I knew better. The figure I had seen was not just some transient soul. There was something sinister lurking in that warehouse. Despite the owner's reassurances, I couldn't shake the feeling of dread that had settled over me. I agreed to take the night shift again, hoping to prove to myself that I could conquer my fears. As the sun began to set, the warehouse transformed. The shadows stretched longer, and the familiar sounds of the night crept in, amplifying my anxiety. That evening I arrived early, determined to reclaim my sense of control. The eerie stillness enveloped the warehouse as I made my rounds, and I found myself constantly glancing over my shoulder, half expecting to see that silhouette lurking in the shadows. Each creak of the building felt like a warning. As the clock struck midnight, the oppressive atmosphere became unbearable. I decided to take a break at the security desk, my mind racing. I reached for my phone, scrolling through messages and trying to distract myself. Just as I thought I could relax, I heard it, the soft shuffle again, echoing through the warehouse. My heart sank, and the sense of foreboding returned tenfold. I turned off the desk lamp, plunging myself into darkness, the only light coming from my phone's screen. The shuffle was closer now, and I could feel the weight of the air pressing against my chest. I had to investigate. I took a deep breath and stepped out into the darkness, my flashlight illuminating the path ahead. I moved cautiously, every sound amplified in the stillness. As I reached the area where I had seen the figure last night, I stopped, straining to listen. The shuffling had stopped, replaced by a chilling silence. My instincts screamed at me to turn back, but I pushed forward, determined to face whatever was haunting me. Suddenly, I caught sight of something in the corner of my eye. I turned my flashlight, revealing a figure standing behind a stack of crates. My breath caught in my throat as I froze, heart pounding. "Who are you?" I called out, my voice echoing through the vast space. The figure didn't respond, but instead stepped further into the shadows, blending into the darkness. I felt a rush of adrenaline and fear. I wanted to run, but my feet felt glued to the ground. "Stop!" I shouted, panic rising. Without thinking, I lunged forward, following the figure as they disappeared into the shadows. The darkness was thick, and my flashlight flickered ominously as I chased after them, the beam dancing wildly over the crates. I rounded the corner, but there was no one there. The area was empty, as if the figure had vanished into thin air. My breath came in ragged gasps as I scanned the surroundings, fear twisting in my stomach. I was alone again, but the feeling of being watched lingered, a constant reminder of the unseen presence. Suddenly, the overhead lights flickered to life, bathing the warehouse in a harsh glow. I squinted, adjusting to the brightness, and realized that the shadows had retreated, but my fear remained. The figure had been real. I was certain of it. I walked back toward the security desk, my heart still racing. I tried to calm myself, rationalizing that it could have been a trick of the light or my imagination running wild. But deep down, I knew that wasn't the case. Something was off. I resumed my patrol, but the sense of unease wrapped around me like a shroud. As I walked through the aisles, I noticed something strange. Several crates that had been sealed were now slightly ajar, their contents spilling onto the floor. I knelt down to investigate, my heart racing as I found them filled with discarded personal items, clothing, photographs, even a torn-up journal. It was as if someone had been living here, hiding amongst the forgotten remnants. A chill raced down my spine as I flipped through the journal, the pages yellowed and filled with frantic scrawls. The words were jumbled and disjointed, but they told a story of desperation and paranoia. The last entry sent a wave of fear crashing over me. "They are watching me. I can't trust anyone." I dropped the journal as if it had burned me, the realization dawning on me that I was not alone in this place. The figure from last night, the whispers in the dark, all of it suddenly felt very real. I scrambled to my feet, my mind racing as I tried to piece together what was happening. Just then, I heard a noise from the far end of the warehouse, a low, menacing growl that made my blood run cold. It was unlike anything I had ever heard, primal and full of anger. I froze, fear clawing at my throat. My instincts screamed at me to run, to escape this nightmare, but I knew I couldn't let fear dictate my actions. I tiptoed toward the sound, my heart hammering in my chest. With each step, the growl grew louder, more menacing. I peeked around the corner, my flashlight illuminating a dark figure hunched over something on the ground. It was a person, their face twisted in anger, as they dug frantically through the crates. "Get away from there!" I shouted, my voice echoing in the empty space. The figure froze, slowly turning to face me. In the harsh light, I could see their face, wild eyes, unkempt hair, and a look of madness that sent chills down my spine. "Who are you?" I demanded, my voice trembling. The figure grinned, a sinister smile that revealed a glimpse of something dark and twisted. "I'm just looking for what's mine," they said, their voice low and gravelly. I took a step back, fear coursing through me. I knew I had to get out of there. "I'm calling the police!" I yelled, hoping to intimidate them. The figure laughed, a chilling sound that echoed in the silence. "They won't help you. You're alone here." The reality of their words sank in, and I felt the walls closing in around me. I had to get away. I turned and ran, my heart pounding as I raced toward the exit. The sound of their laughter followed me, echoing through the warehouse like a haunting refrain. I burst through the doors, gasping for breath as I stumbled into the cool night air. The adrenaline surged through me, and I knew I had to leave to escape this nightmare. But as I looked back at the warehouse, the lights flickered off, plunging it into darkness once more. I felt a shiver run down my spine, the weight of the night pressing heavily against me. In that moment, I knew this was only the beginning. The shadows were deepening, and I was in over my head. I had to confront whatever haunted this place, but I couldn't shake the feeling that it was watching, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The following day was a blur, my mind racing as I tried to process what had happened. I took a long, hot shower, hoping to wash away the fear that clung to my skin. I barely touched my food, my stomach churning with anxiety. Each time I closed my eyes, I saw the figure with the wild eyes and the sinister grin, a haunting reminder of the horrors that awaited me. That evening, I resolved to return to the warehouse. I couldn't let fear dictate my life. I needed to confront whatever was haunting me. Armed with my flashlight and the memory of the journal, I returned to the building as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the ground. The moment I stepped inside, the air felt different. It was heavy and charged, like a storm was brewing. I could feel the tension in the walls, the whispers of the past echoing through the empty space. I took a deep breath and began my patrol, each step echoing in the silence. As I walked past the stacks of crates, I noticed something new. More items had been added to the makeshift camp, old food containers, ripped clothing, and a flickering candle. It was a stark reminder that someone was living here, hiding in the shadows. I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. I continued my rounds, the fear creeping back in as I moved deeper into the warehouse. The shadows seemed to stretch and twist around me, and every creak of the floor sent chills down my spine. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched, that something was lurking just out of sight. When I reached the far end of the warehouse, I heard it again, the soft shuffle, like footsteps creeping closer. I turned off my flashlight, plunging myself into darkness, my heart pounding in my chest. The shuffle grew louder, and I could feel the panic rising within me. Suddenly, the lights flickered on, bathing the warehouse in harsh illumination. I squinted against the brightness, scanning the area. There was no one there, but the oppressive silence hung heavy in the air. I was on high alert, every muscle tense as I waited for something to happen. Then, without warning, I heard a voice, a soft whisper, barely audible. "Help me!" It echoed through the warehouse, sending chills down my spine. My heart raced as I strained to hear more. "Help me, please!" I felt a mix of fear and curiosity wash over me. Was it a trick? A figment of my imagination? I had to find out. I followed the sound, my flashlight illuminating the path ahead. As I walked deeper into the warehouse, the whispers grew louder, calling out for help. "Where are you?" I called out, my voice trembling. The whispering stopped, replaced by an eerie silence that made my skin crawl. I felt a sense of dread creeping in, but I pressed on, driven by a need to uncover the truth. Suddenly, I came across a small alcove, hidden behind a stack of crates. The flickering light of a candle illuminated the space, revealing a figure huddled in the corner. My breath caught in my throat as I recognized the person from the journal, a disheveled individual, eyes wide with fear and desperation. "Please, help me!" they begged, their voice hoarse and trembling. I felt a rush of conflicting emotions: fear, sympathy, confusion. "What happened to you?" I asked, my voice steady despite the pounding in my chest. "They're after me," the figure whispered, glancing nervously over their shoulder. "I can't stay here. You have to help me get out." The panic in their eyes sent a wave of fear through me. I knew I should be afraid, but something about their plea tugged at my heart. "Who's after you?" I pressed, wanting to understand the situation. "You need to tell me more." The figure hesitated, their eyes darting around the room as if they were expecting someone to burst in at any moment. "I can't say. Just know that they'll do anything to get me back," they replied, their voice barely above a whisper. "I thought I was safe here, but they found me. You have to help me." I felt a surge of determination. "Okay, we'll get you out. But we have to be careful." I glanced around, the shadows closing in around us. "Where do you want to go?" The figure took a deep breath, the fear in their eyes deepening. "There's a door on the other side of the warehouse. It leads outside. If we can make it there, we can escape." Without hesitation, I nodded. "Let's go." I reached out to help them up, but as I did, I heard a noise, a heavy thud coming from the opposite side of the warehouse. My heart raced as I turned, the reality of the situation crashing down on me. "They're here," I whispered, panic rising in my chest. The figure's eyes widened in terror, and I grabbed their arm, pulling them close. "We have to move, now!" I led them toward the back of the warehouse, my flashlight beam cutting through the darkness. As we sprinted down the aisle, I heard voices, harsh, low murmurs that sent chills racing down my spine. I didn't know who was after this person, but I could sense their malice. I glanced back, my heart racing as I caught a glimpse of figures emerging from the shadows, their faces obscured but their intentions clear. "Faster!" I urged, adrenaline surging through my veins as we raced toward the door. The footsteps behind us grew louder, pounding against the floor as we neared the exit. The figure beside me stumbled, fear etched on their face. "I can't go on," they cried, panic rising in their voice. "They'll catch us." I felt a surge of desperation. I couldn't let fear consume us. I had to keep moving. "We can't stop. Just a little further," I urged, gripping their hand tightly as we pressed on. The door was just ahead, the faint light from outside beckoning us like a lifeline. With every step, I felt the weight of the darkness closing in, threatening to swallow us whole. We reached the door, and I threw it open, the cold night air rushing in to greet us. But as we stepped outside, a figure emerged from the shadows, blocking our path. My heart sank as I realized we were trapped. "Going somewhere?" The figure sneered, their eyes glinting in the darkness. I felt the blood drain from my face, fear tightening its grip around my throat. We were outnumbered, and there was nowhere to run. The figure beside me trembled, and I felt a surge of hopelessness wash over me. "I'm sorry," they whispered, their voice shaking. "I didn't want to drag you into this." But there was no turning back now. I couldn't let them take me without a fight. "You can't have them," I shouted, my voice rising against the darkness. The figures closed in, their intentions clear. This was a battle for survival, and I was determined to protect the person beside me at all costs. The night air was thick with tension as I faced the figures blocking our escape. My heart raced, adrenaline coursing through my veins. I had never felt so trapped, so powerless. The weight of the shadows pressed down on me, but I couldn't let fear take hold. I had to fight. "Let them go!" I shouted, my voice shaky but resolute. The leader of the group stepped forward, their eyes glinting with malice. "You don't understand what you're getting into," they said, a twisted smile creeping across their face. "You should have stayed away." I felt the figure beside me tremble, their fear palpable. I turned to them, my eyes fierce. "We're not going to let them take you. We'll find a way out." The leader chuckled darkly. "You think you can protect them? You have no idea what you're up against." As they spoke, the others shifted, their faces shrouded in shadow, but I could sense the danger radiating from them. They were predators, and we were their prey. I took a step back, trying to gauge our options. The warehouse loomed behind us, an ominous backdrop to the confrontation. I could hear the faint hum of machinery in the distance, a reminder of the isolation that surrounded us. There was no one else around, just us and the darkness. "Listen," I said, trying to sound more confident than I felt. "We can walk away from this. Just let us go, and we won't say anything." The leader's laughter echoed through the night, a chilling sound that sent shivers down my spine. "You really think it's that easy?" they scoffed. "This isn't just about you or them. You're in the wrong place at the wrong time, and now you'll pay the price." Panic surged through me as I realized the gravity of the situation. We were trapped, with no way out and nowhere to hide. The figures advanced, and I felt a surge of fear. But I couldn't let them take me without a fight. I had to protect the person beside me, no matter the cost. Suddenly, a flicker of movement caught my eye. I glanced to the side and spotted a fire extinguisher mounted on the wall. A plan formed in my mind, a desperate gamble, but it was the only option we had. "Get ready to run," I whispered to the figure beside me, determination flooding my veins. With a swift motion, I lunged for the fire extinguisher and pulled it off the wall. The cold metal felt heavy in my hands, but I was ready to fight back. "Stay behind me," I shouted, aiming the nozzle at the advancing figures. "What are you doing?" the leader yelled, their expression shifting from amusement to anger as they saw my intentions. I squeezed the handle, releasing a cloud of foam that erupted from the extinguisher, engulfing the area in a thick mist. The figures recoiled, momentarily blinded by the sudden spray. "Now!" I shouted, grabbing the figure's hand and pulling them with me as we dashed toward the exit. The world outside was dark and cold, but it felt like freedom. We raced across the parking lot, my heart pounding in my chest as we sprinted toward my car. I could hear the figures shouting behind us, their anger palpable as they stumbled through the mist. I fumbled for my keys, panic rising as I struggled to find them. "Come on, come on!" I muttered under my breath, my hands shaking. Just as I found the keys, I heard footsteps pounding behind us, closing in fast. I turned and saw the leader emerging from the mist, their expression twisted with rage. "Get in the car!" I yelled, shoving the figure beside me into the passenger seat before jumping into the driver's side. I fumbled with the keys, my heart racing as I tried to start the engine. The leader was almost upon us, their face a mask of fury. "Start, start!" I pleaded, turning the key desperately. The engine sputtered but roared to life just as the leader reached the window. I slammed the gear into drive and floored the accelerator, the tires screeching as we sped away from the warehouse. I glanced in the rearview mirror, my heart pounding as I saw the figures fade into the distance, their shouts echoing behind us. We were safe, for now. I felt a rush of relief wash over me, but the weight of the night hung heavy in the air. What just happened?" the figure beside me stammered, their voice shaky. I could see the fear etched on their face, and I knew that the night had taken its toll on both of us. "Who were they?" "I don't know," I replied, trying to catch my breath. "But we have to get out of here." I drove through the empty streets, the familiar landscape of the town feeling foreign under the weight of the night's events. As we neared my apartment, I felt a sense of urgency rising within me. I had to protect this person, to keep them safe. "We need to find a place to hide," I said, my mind racing with possibilities. "Somewhere they can't find us." The figure nodded, their eyes wide with fear. "I can't go back to that warehouse. I can't go anywhere near there again." I could hear the desperation in their voice, and it tugged at my heart. Whatever had happened to them, it was clear they were in grave danger. I pulled into my apartment complex, glancing around nervously. The darkness felt oppressive, and I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. "We should stay inside until morning," I suggested, my mind racing with thoughts of safety. Once inside, I locked the door behind us and took a deep breath, trying to calm my racing heart. The silence in the apartment felt deafening, and I turned to the figure, who was now sitting on the couch, their eyes wide with fear. "Are you okay?" I asked softly, concern flooding my voice. "I'm sorry for dragging you into this. I didn't know what was going to happen." They shook their head, their expression a mix of fear and gratitude. "You saved me. I don't know what I would have done if you hadn't come." The sincerity in their voice touched something deep within me, and I felt a connection forming between us. "I couldn't just leave you there," I replied, sitting down across from them. "But we need to talk about what happened. You need to tell me everything." I leaned forward, my heart pounding as I awaited their response. They hesitated, glancing around the room as if expecting someone to burst through the door. "It's not safe here," they whispered. "They'll come for me." "Who?" I pressed, needing answers. "Who are they?" The figure took a deep breath, their eyes brimming with fear. "They're a group that hunts people like me," they explained, their voice trembling. "I'm not who you think I am. I'm not just a victim, I'm a target." The weight of their words hung in the air, a thick fog of confusion and dread settling over us. I could feel my heart racing as I tried to wrap my mind around what they had just said. "What do you mean you're not just a victim?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper, afraid to provoke whatever unseen danger lurked outside. The figure leaned closer, their eyes darting nervously to the windows. "I can't explain everything right now. Just know that I made a mistake, a huge mistake. And now, they're coming for me." Their voice trembled with fear, and I could see the tension in their shoulders. "Okay, let's take a step back," I said, trying to keep my voice steady despite the pounding in my chest. "What kind of mistake? Who are these people?" They took a deep breath, visibly gathering their thoughts. "I was part of a group, a community of people who lived off the grid. We had our own rules, our own way of life. But I got involved in something I shouldn't have, something dangerous." My mind raced as I tried to piece together the fragments of their story. "Dangerous how? Were you involved in illegal activities?" They shook their head. "Not exactly. We believed we were fighting against the system, against the people who take advantage of others. But things spiraled out of control. I discovered secrets, things I wasn't supposed to know. That's when I realized I was in over my head." I could see the fear etched on their face, a mixture of regret and desperation. "And then they found out you knew too much," I said, piecing it together. "Is that why they're after you?" "Yes," they whispered, their voice trembling. "Once they realized I had information that could expose them, they came after me. I thought I could hide, but I was wrong. They found me, and I had to flee." The chilling reality settled over me like a blanket of dread. "So that's why you were at the warehouse. You thought it was a safe place. I thought I could disappear for a while. But I was wrong," they replied, their voice thick with emotion. "Now I've put you in danger too. I never wanted this. Don't blame yourself," I said firmly, trying to dispel the fear that hung in the air. "We'll figure this out together. But we need to be smart about it. We have to stay quiet and stay out of sight." They nodded, but I could see the fears still lingering in their eyes. "I can't stay here long," they said, glancing toward the door. "They'll come looking for me. I don't know how they found me before, but they will again." "Then let's think," I urged, trying to keep my voice calm. "What can we do? Is there anyone you can trust?" "I don't think so," they admitted, their voice barely above a whisper. "The people I thought I could count on turned on me. I can't risk leading them to anyone else." "Then we need to come up with a plan," I said, pacing the small living room as my mind raced. "We can't stay here indefinitely. We need to figure out a way to get you to safety." As I continued to pace, a thought struck me. "What about your family? Do you have anyone who might help?" I can't go back to them. They would be in danger too," they said, shaking their head. "I can't risk it. The moment I reach out to anyone, they'll find me." The weight of the situation pressed heavily on my chest. I felt a mix of frustration and helplessness. "Okay, let's consider our options. We need to find a way to get you out of here. We can't just sit and wait for them to come knocking." Just then, a loud crash echoed from the street outside, shattering the tense silence in the apartment. My heart raced as I froze, instinctively turning to the window. The streetlights cast eerie shadows across the pavement, and I felt a wave of panic wash over me. "Did you hear that?" I whispered, my voice barely audible. The figure nodded, their eyes wide with fear. I felt a knot of dread tighten in my stomach. "We need to move. Now." I grabbed the flashlight from the coffee table, my pulse racing as I tried to remain calm. "Where are we going?" they asked, their voice shaking. "Anywhere but here," I replied, my mind racing. "We can't stay in one place. We need to keep moving." I led them to the back door, my heart pounding as I glanced outside. The alley was dark, but I could see the faint outline of a figure lurking in the shadows. My breath caught in my throat as I felt a wave of terror wash over me. "Stay close," I whispered, gripping their hand tightly as we slipped out into the night. The cool air felt electric against my skin, heightening my senses as I scanned the area for any signs of danger. We moved quietly down the alley, the sound of our footsteps muffled against the asphalt. I could feel the tension radiating from the figure beside me as they clutched my arm, their fear palpable. As we rounded a corner, I noticed a parked car just a few feet ahead. "We can take that," I said, pointing toward it. "It looks abandoned. If we can hotwire it, we might be able to get away." "Are you sure?" they asked, their eyes wide with fear. "There's no other option," I replied firmly, feeling a surge of determination. "We need to act fast." I approached the car cautiously, my heart racing as I checked for any signs of life. It was old and dusty, the paint chipped and faded. I tried the door, and to my surprise it swung open with ease. "Get in," I urged, glancing around nervously. The figure hesitated but climbed into the passenger seat, their eyes darting around the dark alley. I slipped into the driver's seat and glanced around, my mind racing. "I've never hotwired a car before," I admitted, fumbling with the steering column. "But we don't have time to waste. Just be quick," they urged, fear lacing their voice. I took a deep breath, focusing on the task at hand. With a few swift movements, I pried open the panel beneath the steering wheel, revealing a jumble of wires. My hands trembled as I searched for the right ones, the adrenaline coursing through my veins. Come on," I muttered under my breath, finally identifying the ignition wires. I twisted them together, my heart pounding as I prayed it would work. Suddenly, the engine roared to life, and I felt a rush of relief wash over me. "It worked!" I exclaimed, my heart racing as I slammed the gear into drive. "Go! Go!" the figure urged, their eyes wide with fear. I backed out of the alley and onto the main road, the tires screeching against the pavement. I drove fast, adrenaline pumping as I navigated the dark streets. I could feel the tension in the air, a palpable sense of danger, as we fled the scene. I glanced in the rearview mirror, half expecting to see headlights following us, but the road behind us was empty. "Where do we go now?" they asked, their voice shaky. "Anywhere but here," I replied, my mind racing as I considered our options. "We need to get far away from this town." As we drove through the night, I could feel the weight of our situation pressing down on us. The streets were eerily quiet, and the darkness felt oppressive. I glanced at the figure beside me, their eyes wide with fear. "Are you okay?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "I'm just scared," they admitted, their voice trembling. "I don't know what's going to happen next." I reached out and squeezed their hand, trying to offer some comfort. "We'll figure this out together. We'll find a way to keep you safe." The miles stretched on as we drove deeper into the night, the headlights cutting through the darkness like a beacon of hope. But I knew that the danger was far from over. The shadows were still lurking, and I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. Just as I began to relax, a flash of lights appeared in the rearview mirror, growing closer and closer. My stomach dropped as I realized they were following us. "Someone's behind us!" I shouted, panic rising in my chest. "Step on it!" the figure urged, their voice laced with fear. I pressed down on the gas, the engine roaring as we sped down the highway. The lights grew closer, and I felt a wave of dread wash over me. They're gaining on us! As we rounded a bend, I glanced back and saw the vehicle behind us, a dark SUV, its headlights piercing through the night. My heart raced as I realized we were being hunted. "What do we do?" they asked, fear creeping into their voice. "Hold on!" I shouted, swerving the car onto a dirt road that cut through the woods. The tires skidded against the gravel, and I could feel the adrenaline coursing through my veins as I navigated the rough terrain. We raced through the trees, the branches scratching against the sides of the car. I could hear the engine of the SUV revving behind us, relentless in its pursuit. "Keep going!" the figure urged, their voice filled with desperation. "We can't let them catch us!" I pushed the car to its limits, praying that the engine wouldn't fail us. The dirt road was narrow and winding, but I forced myself to focus, navigating the turns as best as I could. Suddenly, a loud bang echoed through the night, and I felt the car shudder. "What was that?" the figure shouted, panic rising in their voice. "I don't know," I yelled back, my heart racing. I glanced at the rearview mirror and saw the SUV gaining on us, its headlights cutting through the darkness like a predator stalking its prey. We tore through the woods, but the terrain was rough, and I could feel the car struggling to keep up. I knew we wouldn't be able to outrun them forever. Just ahead, I saw a clearing up ahead. "We need to find a place to hide," I shouted, trying to keep my voice steady despite the fear gripping me. As we burst into the clearing, I spotted an old, abandoned cabin nestled among the trees. "There! We can hide in there!" I veered the car toward the cabin, my heart racing as I slammed the brakes. The figure beside me was already unbuckling their seatbelt, urgency flooding their movements. "Let's go!" they urged, practically leaping from the car. We dashed toward the cabin, my heart pounding as I glanced back to see the SUV skidding to a stop behind us. "Quick! Inside!" I shouted, pushing the door open and slipping inside the darkened cabin. The air was stale and filled with the scent of decay. I glanced around, my eyes adjusting to the darkness as I searched for a place to hide. "Where do we go?" the figure whispered, their voice trembling with fear. I spotted a small closet in the corner, its door slightly ajar. "In there!" I urged, gesturing toward it. We hurried to the closet, squeezing ourselves inside just as I heard footsteps approaching the cabin. My heart raced as I held my breath, praying they wouldn't find us. The door creaked open, and I could hear muffled voices outside. "They can't be far," one of the figures said, their tone low and threatening. "They must have come this way." I felt the figure beside me tremble, their fear palpable as we huddled in the darkness. The voices grew louder, and I strained to hear what they were saying. "We'll search the cabin. They can't have gone far." I bit my lip, trying to suppress my fear as I listened to their footsteps echoing in the cabin. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, each beat like a drum signaling our impending doom. "Stay quiet," I whispered, glancing at the figure beside me. They nodded, their eyes wide with terror. The footsteps grew closer, and I felt a wave of dread wash over me as I realized they were searching the cabin. The shadows danced around us as the figures moved through the room, their voices low and conspiratorial. "Check the closet," one of them said, and I felt my heart stop. I held my breath as the footsteps approached, the door creaking open slowly. I could see a shadow loom over the closet, the figure peering inside. "Nothing in here," they said, moving on. I felt a surge of relief wash over me, but it was short-lived as I heard them moving around the cabin, searching every nook and cranny. "We need to find them before they escape," another voice said, the urgency palpable. I glanced at the figure beside me, fear etched on their face. "What if they find us?" they whispered, panic rising in their voice. "We'll have to fight," I replied, my heart racing. "But for now, we need to stay hidden." As the figures continued their search, I felt the tension in the air, a palpable sense of danger that hung over us like a shroud. I knew we had to act fast, but every second felt like an eternity as we waited in the darkness, praying they wouldn't discover our hiding place. After what felt like an eternity, the figures moved away, their voices fading as they left the cabin. I waited, my heart pounding in my chest, straining to hear their footsteps recede into the distance. Finally, I let out a breath I didn't realize I had been holding. "I think they're gone," I whispered, my voice trembling. The figure beside me nodded, their eyes wide with fear. "What do we do now?" "We need to get out of here. We can't stay in one place for too long," I replied, glancing around the dark closet. I carefully opened the door, peering out into the cabin. It was empty, the faint light from the moon casting eerie shadows across the floor. "Let's go," I urged, stepping out cautiously. We moved quietly through the cabin, my senses heightened as I scanned the area for any signs of danger. The darkness felt oppressive, but I pushed forward, determined to find a way out. As we reached the door, I glanced back one last time. "We'll find a way to make this right," I promised the figure beside me. "We'll keep you safe." We stepped outside, the cool night air wrapping around us like a blanket. But the danger was far from over. As we moved toward the edge of the clearing, I could hear the distant sound of engines revving, searching for us. "We need to hurry," I whispered, urgency flooding my voice. We ran into the woods, the trees enveloping us as we raced away from the cabin. My heart pounded in my chest, the adrenaline coursing through my veins as we navigated through the darkness. The sounds of the engines grew closer, and I knew we had to move fast. I could feel the weight of this situation pressing down on me, the fear of what lay ahead looming like a shadow. "We can't stop," I urged, pushing myself to keep going. "We have to get far away from here." As we dashed through the underbrush, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being hunted. The night felt alive with danger, the shadows lurking just beyond our reach. But despite the fear, I felt a sense of determination surge within me. We would make it through this together. I would protect the figure beside me, no matter what it took. As we continued to run, the world around us began to fade into the background. The darkness enveloped us, but I knew we would find a way out. I could feel the bond between us strengthening as we fought against the odds, our determination burning brightly in the face of fear. In that moment, I realized that we were not just survivors, we were fighters, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. And together, we would find our way to safety.